Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com. Today we're going to be going over a really fun gambit called the Jerome Gambit. I've been playing quite a bit myself lately, and it's a ton of fun, but I'll go ahead and caution you right now, it's not the most sound gambit. It's really meant for blitz games, rapid games. Maybe you're playing an opponent far below you as far as ranking. It's going to catch someone off guard. If they are not prepared for it, they're going to have a really tough time dealing with all the variations. They're going to have an exposed king, and it's just really hard to deal with that. But if you're playing against an opponent that is familiar with this opening and they're a really strong player, you're going to have a really tough time, and you're going to lose a lot of games, unless maybe it's kind of that blitz game and you kind of catch them off guard. So this is not me saying that this is the most sound opening. I recognize that it is not at all, but it is super fun. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it. It mostly derives from the Giocco piano, which starts out with pawn to e4, pawn e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop here to c4, and then bishop to c5. White's going to sacrifice his bishop here on f7, and then after the king recaptures, I recognize the king could not recapture, but that would just be weird. The king comes here to e7 or even f8. White has a lot of different options, but even just bishop back here to b3 is fine. Up in material, the king can't move or can't castle, so that's going to be bad. But we're going to be looking at the king taking here on f7, the knight taking here on e5, after the knight recapturing here, then the queen coming to h5. Now from here, there's a lot of ways that black can continue. Some are much better for white than others. What we'd really like to see black do is play king here to f6 or king here to e7. Both of those are going to be easy games for white. We'll go ahead and look at king here to f6. Always important to know how to capitalize on your opponent's mistakes. We're going to play queen here to f5. Then all of a sudden the king's going to come back here to e7. We're going to take here king here to f8. We're going to go ahead and take this bishop. If you were instead to play king here to f7, we're going to first kind of in between move queen here to d5. Now that after the king moves, we're going to go ahead and play queen here to c5 and capture that material. But it may just be easier if they just go here to f8, save us a move here. From here, you could see black play a few options. Pawn here to d6, just kind of retreat back. You're in a great position. You're up material. Your opponent's king can't castle. That's going to be fine. If they play queen here to e7, I can't fault you if you take here. Like we said before, you're going to be up in material. Your opponent's king can't castle. It's not as important if you don't have the queen on board, because now it just becomes a piece in the middle that can attack. So I usually like to just keep my queen back. It's a very aggressive opening, so I like to have all my aggressive pieces, but either way is going to be completely fine. If they were to play knight here to e7, then I just, hey, my queen's not a threat right now. I just play knight here to c3, continue on board, that's fine. King here to f7, that's always super weird that they want to get their king involved more into the game, but that's fine if they want to. Queen here to d5, now if they just retreat back, pawn here to e5. This is a nice little move because if they ever now try to get their pieces involved, pawn here to d6. Now queen here to f3 is just fun because it kind of blocks off this knight here to f6. It's a very annoying pawn right here on e5. So that's kind of what we see if we see king to f6 early on into the game. The other move that we really like to see is the king here to e7. That's fine. We're just first going to take their knight here on e5. That's pretty easy. And then after king to f8, same thing as we saw before. Queen over here to c5 check. And if we saw the king over here to f7, same as before. Queen here to d5 check. And then we're going to go ahead and take this bishop here on c5. Now, while those were the best case moves, you're not going to see them the majority of the time, so it's always important to know the other options that you could see. One that's very popular is pawn here to g6. We're going to go ahead and take here on e5. Now, black has one good move and one good move only. If you don't see this move, you should just be terrorizing them. You're either going to be taking their bishop, you're going to be taking their rook. All these are going to be very, very good for you. But the one move you need to be looking out for is queen here to e7. This is the best move that black has. Now, white has a few options. He could go ahead and exchange queens off the board. We're not going to be playing that game. We could play something else, you know, pawn here to f4. We're not going to be playing that game. The game we're going to be playing is going all in, and that means queen taking here on h8. The queen's going to come down here to e4, and then king here to a d1. Now black has a few options from here. His best moves are queen taking here on g2 or queen to g4 check. Now both of those are going to be bad news for us. We'll kind of look at what happens if he does those. If he plays anything else, it's going to be very, very good for us. But first one that we'll see is queen to g2. We're going to play queen takes here on h7. Now, if king plays king to f8, this is going to be very, very difficult for white to do anything except for lose. This is kind of one of those, hey, your opponent's kind of prepared, and you're going to probably lose. But you have a possibility of saving face a little bit. Pawn here to c3. Your opponent plays queen takes here on h1, gobbling up material. You play king to c2, and then just hope and pray that maybe you can get some sort of continuous check, threefold repetition, and draw the game. That's pretty much all you have to look forward to in this position. Now, after we have the queen taking here on h7, if he doesn't come to f8, he has a few other options. If he were to play king to f6, okay, well then all of a sudden we're going to play queen to h8. Maybe we can continue this on board. That's going to be fine for us. If we get a threefold repetition and get a draw on board, we'll take that all day long. If he ever goes over here to king to e6, if we ever see king to e6, we're bringing our rook over here to e1. That's going to be fine. We're getting more pressure, controlling this e file. Check. Now we can start to get our queen involved into the game. Potentially wherever he goes, we can get our knight involved. We can play pawn here to d4. It doesn't matter if they take. We can get our dark square bishop involved into the game. So that's definitely going to be very good. Could always play the terrible move of just king to e8 and then just capture here. We could see the bishop come up, we could see the king come down here, and then we can get our rook involved into the game. So that's going to be very, very good for white. Now if we come back, instead of the queen taking on g2, the other move we really don't want to see is queen to g4, but it's not as bad. But we'll play pawn here to f3, stopping that. Queen here to g2, and then we're kind of the same song and dance. Queen here to h7, and then kind of hoping for the same stuff. Now, if we don't see the queen move, we could see some other moves. Knight to f6 sounds reasonable. Pawn here to f3. This is an important move on the board. Now, the queen's going to have to move, so we could see queen to e5 potentially, and then d3. This is a much better position on board. It's going to be very difficult for black to actually attack with these pawns right here. So that's going to be good. Now if we come back and say, okay, let's say the knight doesn't move, but let's say pawn to d5. Sometimes players are really trying to control the center of the board. They feel like they've already got it right now, so they want to open up the door for their light square bishop involved into the game. Because, hey, once you get your bishop here, it's going to be very, very difficult, potentially. This is going to be great for black. We play queen to h7. Now it doesn't even matter if they play king to f8, because we can have pawn to f3 first before the queen takes here on g2, and this is going to be a very, very good game for white. So that's kind of what we're going to see if the pawn comes here to g6 early on in the gambit. Next move that you may see is knight to g6, just kind of blocking this. Don't right away take this bishop here on c5. First go ahead and play queen to d5. He potentially could just come here to f8, and then we take this bishop, and now it's checked, so that's going to be better for us. It could always play king to e8. That's fine as well. We take this bishop here on c5. Now you may see pawn to d6. If there's a few ways you could play this, I like to just continue the aggression. Queen here to b5, just giving them more opportunities to make mistakes. It's more correct to play pawn here to c6, but potentially they could play bishop here to d7. All of a sudden, queen here to b7. This is going to be better, just gobbling up more material on board. So definitely try that if you see it. Now, if we come back here, instead of the knight coming here, we could see a few other options. We're going to go over some of them. The strongest move for black is king to e6. Now, the reason you won't see it as much as you should is it feels counterintuitive for black to be bringing his king to the center of the board and feeling like that's the best move. Now, if they've studied it and they understand how black should be defending, and you know they're a strong player, if they play king to e6, that's probably a bad sign because they know how to defend. But usually, if you're not too familiar, it's just very scary to go ahead and play this king here to e6. But from here, white's going to play pawn here to f4. And then we could see a ton of different stuff. I've seen black try all sorts of stuff from here. You may see knight to f6 attacking the queen. Well, we're just going to go ahead and take this knight right here. It's protected, and then, after the king moves, we're going to go and take this bishop. That's going to be fine on board. We could instead see knight to f7. That's fine as well. We're going to just go ahead and take this material right here. If we were to see pawn here to d6, then we just continue the aggression, queen here to c4 check. That's going to be fine as well. We could always see pawn to g6. Same thing as before. Go ahead and take the knight here on e5. Now we could see some very tricky stuff. We could see knight to f3 check. And this kind of forces us to play pawn to, taking here on f3. We could see pawn here to d6, protecting this bishop here on c5. Then we can always play pawn to d4. It's kind of tricky. We kind of recognize the bishop can't take here on d4 because queen to d5 check, and then the bishop's going to fall. But it's also tricky because the bishop can't really come here to b4, because now after pawn to b3 or c3, usually the bishop just comes back here to a5. It's kind of a safe move, but now the queen can just take. So this is not only forcing the bishop back, but it's controlling the center of the board, and then the queen can usually come in here to d5 if he wants to, f5 depending on where his opponent goes. He can always get his knight involved into the game, and also it's opening up the door for the dark square bishop. Also, we now have the G file, semi-open file for the rook to control. So while this is very crazy and the king is not safe, that's kind of the name of the game. Now the best move from black, if we look at it, instead of the knight coming down here, is just to play pawn to d6. Now, we can still take this knight and get some material back, but this kind of opens up the door for the light square bishop. So from here, we're going to go ahead and take. After the pawn recaptures, we're going to come down here to h3. This is just kind of one of those, hey, your opponent's playing the best moves. You just have to hope that they make a mistake. So from here, we're kind of hoping for king to f6. We kind of wrap our rook over here to f1. That's kind of what we're hoping for. Now if we see king to e7, then queen to g3. Hopefully they're kind of looking at this g7 square. They make a mistake and they play, pawn to g6. Then all of a sudden that's a mistake. Queen here to e5 check. We're going to go ahead and take that rook over here on h8. As we talked about, this really requires a mistake if we've come down this far. More than likely, they kind of know what's going on. But, hey, they could make a mistake later on in the game like this. The next move that you could see from here is king to f8. We're going to go ahead and just take this knight here on e5. You could see a dumb move from here, knight to f6 or something. Who knows really what they're doing. Just go ahead and take the bishop. Don't get too creative or anything. But usually they're going to play the most intuitive move, and that is pawn to d6. It opens up the door for the light square bishop. It attacks the queen. It protects the bishop. This makes sense. So I'm just going to play queen here to f4 check, continue that pressure. If they play knight here to f6, then I'm going to play pawn here to d3, open up the board from light square or from a dark square bishop. I'm not going to feel great about it though. I don't really like this position. I'm hoping that he doesn't play this. He's kind of opening up the door for all of his pieces to get involved into the action. So this is not great. Instead, let's say he doesn't play knight to f6. He plays queen to f6. Okay, also not a great spot. I'm going to go ahead and take right here. After the knight takes, I'm going to go ahead and play knight to c3. If we look at on board, he's got an extra minor piece. I've got 2 pawns up of material. His king is exposed. He can't castle, but I don't have a queen, so that's not as important. I'm definitely down in material, so I'm just going to fight back here. I don't want to get too crazy or the game will just get away from me. So that's kind of a bad spot. Hopefully you don't see that as well. So we took a look at if you actually get into the gioco piano, but sometimes your opponent may not play that. They could try something crazy. I've seen the Blackburn Shilling Gambit, which is knight here to d4, and they're kind of expecting you just to play knight taking here on e5. Oh, hey, there's free material here. But it's kind of nice when they play this. They feel like they're creative, and then you play bishop here to f7. And they're like, I don't even know what just happened. This is bad. After they take, you take with your knight right here, and then things just go very bad. They could play, after the king comes back here to e8, Then we come queen to h5. They have, two options here. If they were to play queen or king to e7, then all of a sudden we see check. The king's going to come out. All of a sudden check. We kind of force them down the side of the board. More checks. Then all of a sudden we have checkmate on board. The only other really option they have is if they were to play pawn to, if we come back one more, pawn to g6. And then we're going to take here on g6. They're going to take, we're going to recapture here with our king, or with our queen here on g6. And this just gets crazy. All their pawns on the king side of the board are gone. We've given up material, so we're definitely down in that department. But we're going to have a fun time chasing this king around the board. So that's definitely one option. Now if we come back here, instead of the king coming back here to e8, if you were to play king here to e6, then we could just be pretty creative. Pawn here to c3. If he wants to take, we can recapture. His king's going to be in the center of the board. Although we're down to material right now, we're controlling the center with our pawns. We're going to be chasing his king all over the board the rest of the game. So this is going to be fine as well. And that's kind of just a surprise. You don't have to play that against the the Blackburn Shilling. Some people kind of have their own flavor of how they want to attack that. But it's just nice to have kind of the Jerome Gambit in the back of your mind, knowing that, hey, you can blast this off, especially if it's a blitz or a rapid game. It's just so hard for your opponent to play this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this fun Gambit. Test it out. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you're having success with it. Until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.